Hello, welcome to J Lowe Artist YouTube channel. Today we'll be doing some drawing. Remember, art makes life better. Thanks for being here today. Appreciate your coming along on this journey with me that we call art. So we're going to do a mermaid here, this sitting on a rock, and the first thing we have to do is kind of figure out how we want this to go. So her arm is clear over here. Let's have her arm almost touch that edge of that page over here. So I'm just going to make a little mark and say that's where I want it to go. And then we're going to kind of go stick figure like. This is the arm. The head's going to be up in here. Maybe we'll make that head go up a little higher, almost to the top of the page. Give yourself plenty of room for hair and stuff, but I'm just going to... Is that long enough? That's not probably long enough. I'm going to have to move that head over a little bit. So as you figure out where things go, remember to draw it right first and then erase what's wrong. And then how about kind of an S curve for the tail, kind of come down like this. There's the shoulder, there's the arm, there's the hip. So get it so it all fits into your picture frame. Then if that chair becomes a rock, you kind of go like this, maybe have some water spraying over here or something. I mean, we can figure out later on what to do. Maybe her tail will be in the water over here and we'll see part of it coming up over here. So that we'll have this all be in the water. So now what I'm going to do is just start adding some thickness to my stick figure. You know, we had the bone structure, if you will, of the stick figure. Don't worry about things like fingers and stuff like that. We'll get all that later. So once you have the basic structure down, if you'd like to, you could get rid of some of those sketchy lines. It's not that big of a deal because when you're using charcoal, a lot of that will fade into the charcoal and mix, and you can just get rid of it without erasing. Good reference for a mermaid. You can add the hair later. I'm just going to kind of block it in just to remind me that that's kind of where it's at. Probably give her a little more hair than, I mean, mermaids have long hair, right? So what's important here, hands and faces are the two big important things. Everything else you can kind of simplify and symbolize, but those two things are going to be important for us. So got to go in, make sure that the face is where the face is supposed to go. The eyes are where the eyes go. Everything else we'll just take care of. So let's block in where remember that the eyes are right in the middle. So if you divide the face in half, your eyes are right in the middle. Oh, somewhere around in there. I'm just going to block them in. The nose is not quite in the middle between the chin and the top of the eye, or the middle of the eye. A little bit higher. And I'm just going to block that in with a little shadow. Same thing with the mouth. Just going to block that in. The bottom lip, you could just do a little shadow under there. And these are just become guidelines for me. I can alter, I can change, I can make them different. Right now they're just guidelines. Because once we've figured out where everything goes with our number 2 pencil, we've got to switch over to charcoal. I'm also going to do the hand. Since the hand is here, I'll do both hands. Lift that up a little bit. And basically what I want to do is you just establish where the wrist goes, where the plane of the palm goes, especially the back of the hand. This represents the knuckles. You kind of want to get those in. And then the fingers are just little sausages. And they're also in little arches. So especially when the hand is open and relaxed like this. So this is where the knuckles go. This is where the knuckles go. So you got 1, 2. Even though there are 3 joints, you still have the phalanges, the little ends. But those kind of blend in with the other parts. So it's these 2 parts here that become more important. So they're almost like little skeletal hands. Each one you're thinking, okay, this is where the bone is. That thumb is hidden back in there. You just kind of got to pick out the tip of the thumb. And right now, that's just a guide. That's all it does, is that's just a guide. Because we're gonna have to define it a little bit better later on. Same thing with the other hand. I'm going to do the same thing over here with this hand. Start out, there's my wrist right there. There's the back of the hand. The thumb. The thumb is a little almost a banana shape, if you will. Not quite, but almost. Can't see the other knuckle, so I'm just going to worry about this finger. And notice how the tip of the finger curves up. All the bones in our body are curved. They have to be, so that they flex. Important to have them flex. So really that's all we need right there. Is that kind of shape. Everything else will fall into place. So once you've got the structure down, once you're happy with your composition, then we're ready to solidify this into the paper with our charcoal. So I'm going to take this charcoal now, and I'm going to pick out all the really dark areas, like her hair. And just pick out the dark areas. If it's kind of gray or in between, or don't worry about it. And don't be afraid to leave some out. All I'm doing is picking out the darkest areas. And if you're more comfortable with doing the face first, go for that. An eyebrow. A little eye. It's good to do the face while your charcoal is nice and sharp anyway. We talked about facial proportions before, and just to remind you as we're going through some of those facial proportions, you've got an eye in the middle of your eye, so the width of your eye should be the distance between the two eyes is one eye width, and it's also the distance between the nose and the eye are about the same width. If you go straight down from the center of the eye, that's about where the corners of the mouth are. So all those things are just kind of going through my brain as I'm trying to figure out where the proportions are. Remember, your edges are really important. So as you're doing things like hair, don't be afraid to leave a few little lines just kind of straggling out there, even just kind of hanging out there without being attached onto anything. That's okay. Now, charcoal is so easy to blend that there's so much that you can leave out. You can just say to yourself, oh, I know that's going to be blended. I know that's going to go in there. Just going to leave it out. So all those shadows and everything that's down in there, even the shadows along her face, the really light ones, I'm going to do all that with the cotton swab. Sometimes when I'm doing hair, especially curly hair, I'll do little lines to just tell me which direction that those curls go. Because then as I start shading through, I can kind of come through and put those lines coming through. Just helps my hair to look a little more believable. Don't be afraid to leave it out. If it's light, thin, just leave it out. Some of these areas, like the back of her arm, is very light. You don't want to draw a line around everything. And so just say, well, I'm just going to draw in the darkest areas, leave the lightest ones out. So the top of her arm on both sides, especially the shoulder over here, you can just leave it out. Sometimes you can just like say, well, right here, let's have the ocean kind of coming back in here like this. And the gray of the ocean will define the edge of that arm. So that's our eye level line is right there. That's where the horizon meets the ocean. Or you can do maybe a happy little cloud or something floating by if we want to. But now anything that's kind of dark, don't be afraid to put that in there. You can use the side of your charcoal if you want to get some of those shadows in. But only get the dark ones in, because the rest of that we're going to do with the cotton swab. So like I say, don't be afraid to leave some things out. So this top of the arm right there, I'm just going to leave it out. In my Art 1 class, we were talking about leaving things out. I said, when in doubt, leave it out. That's my motto. When you're doing the fingers, don't be afraid to leave stuff out there either. So what I'm going to do is, I can see the little dark areas in between that hand. I'm just going to throw in the dark areas and the fingertips. There's a little dark area in the fingertips. Don't worry about fingernails and things like that. We can get those later. There's a shadow where the knuckle is. You can put that in. Can't see her fingertip here, but you know where it's at, so just throw it in. There's the tip of the thumb. You really can't see much more of anything's going on over there. And that's really about it for the hand right now. I mean, even if we were to get rid of all the graphite, which I will just to show you what I mean, you can still see the hand. You still know where it's at. Okay, simplify it a little bit. Oh, I never thought about this. Seashells. We need some seashells. We'll have her wearing some seashells just to keep her modesty a little bit. Again, the top of her arm over here, if you don't, it's really light, don't put it in. Don't worry about it. You can maybe add just a little curve somewhere to say, hey, you know what, this is where it curves. I need it a little bit longer. My hand was a little out of place there. I'm going to go ahead and with my edge of my charcoal there, put in some shadows. Like I said, a lot of that we're going to get with our cotton swab. All right, now the fun part, the tail. I'm going to have mine kind of disappearing in the water. So there's going to be kind of splashy water. So I'm just going to come in and remember that water is very rounded, very linear, and as it comes up, it splashes, it becomes very spontaneous. So I'm just going to draw little areas like this. This represents the shadows of that white water. And as it comes in, and you just kind of little curves. Here's a little droplet of water right there. Another drop over here. I just decide where you want to put it. And they're just little curves. This comes from experience. And then as that water kind of comes up into it, there's a little bit of a little color to it. So you can just throw some of that in there too, just ever so lightly. If you're thinking, oh, I'm drawing too much, then stop. When in doubt, leave it out. So just do a little bit. There's your water. And the rest of it we'll do with the cotton swab because it's light and soft. You know, you don't want your water to look hard. When in doubt, leave it out. I'm going to have the edge of her tail over here. I'm going to draw that edge kind of coming up. There's the edge of her tail. Put some little spines on that edge. I don't know, you ever go fishing? Kind of play with the fish a little bit before you eat it. So there's a little bit of her tail, and you want to maybe see a little bit of that tail up in there. So just here and there in the water, I'm just going to darken in some little areas, and that's going to say, oh, this is where the tail is. We can even kind of delineate it over here. There's a shadow that comes down this way, and so I'm going to go ahead and shadow that tail over there. Maybe curve it just ever so slightly. There's our mermaid. Now, there's some things that I know about form. Remember when we're drawing form and we have a sphere, you got to have a core shadow, you've got to have reflected light, cast shadows, all that stuff. So right along that edge, where that shadow is, I'm just going to put this core shadow, of course. And there's kind of the idea that that's kind of a shiny surface, and so we're going to have a real strong highlight. You put a little shadow like where her arm is. You can even have a little shadow where her hand kind of comes down over the edge there. I'll show you an easy way to do the rock with the cotton swab. But at this point, once you've got it all, this almost looks like ink. This is how, if I were to draw this with ink, this is how I would draw it. You pick out the darkest areas and then you draw it with your ink. But we have a little secret weapon here called a cotton swab. And we can now take that cotton swab and pick up some of the charcoal from one place, like in her hair where it's darkest. We can pick that up, smooth that out, and then we can move it over to some shadowy areas, like in her neck. Down in the torso. And just be very, very soft with it. in the face, down the side of the nose. Just be very soft with it. Now we can come back into this and we can blend a little bit more, or we can use our kneaded eraser, or we could add more to it. There's lots you can do to it. Remember, when in doubt, leave it out. Just keep it basic. So I've got a tiny bit of charcoal on my cotton swab. I'm going to go ahead and use that in, like, down her arm here. Under her torso here. Wherever you feel like you need a little bit of shading, you can use that. And just barely touch it, just light, keep it light. If you think to yourself, oh look, now I can do that edge, you can take that cotton swab and just do that edge, and there's the edge of her arm. I'm really excited to get to show you how to do scales, because there is an easy way to do scales. So many people fret about fish scales or dragon scales or, you know, what have you, scales. I'm going to show you an easy way to do them. But you have to get enough charcoal on your cotton swab in order to do this. So another way you can do that too is if you got some tracing paper, you can take your tracing paper and scribble on some charcoal, and then you can use your cotton swab to pick that charcoal up and move it over to here. So that's one way to do that too. So let me show you an easy way to do scales with the cotton swab. All you're going to do is little dots, and you put the dots in the dark areas, and in the light areas you just leave them out. So for example, over here, I'm just going to do these little dots. I'm just taking my cotton swab and just offsetting them just a little bit. So there's some fish scales. And as I get into the light areas, I can do less. And then as I get back into some darker areas, I can do a little bit more. So you leave a little spot in the center that is open. You can always add more later on. This is going to give you kind of a fish scale look. If you're going to do things like dragons where the scales are a little bit larger, that's all you do. You just make them a little larger. For the fingers, I'm just going to take some of my cotton swab and do a little shadow where the knuckles are, like that. A little shadow on the lower part of the carpals, metacarpals. So you got your carpals, metacarpals, and then your phalanges on the end, right? And really, that's about all you need for the hand. I mean, the hand starts coming through. You can add a little bit more, and as we go, we'll just keep refining until it's the way we want it. Even in the reflected light areas, if you wanted to do a little shapes, little dots like this, you could. So in that core shadow, I'm picking this little bit out and just making it look kind of scaly. And that's easy. Those scales are soft. They're all about the same size because your cotton swab's about the same size. This works also for certain types of snakes. Sometimes snakes have a very patterned look to them. Well, some fish do too, like koi. So you can do, here's another way you can do this, just so you know. You can do little crisscrossing. If this comes up and around like this, I can do these little shapes like this. And then I crisscross them the other way, come the other way. So I kind of create a little diamond look. So this is a good way for dragons or something that has larger scales. I'm just going to show you this way. And then what you do is you take your cotton swab, and in the bottom of your scales, you just do this little kind of shape like this. Leave a little area open. And that's a great way to do larger scales. You can come back in and you can soften those a little bit. You can add a little bit of a dot of light to them. Kind of like this. So if you're going to do any kind of fantasy creature that has scales, you can do it either way. But this just makes a different feel to it. The scale's a little bumpier, a little thicker. So I'll let you choose what you decide to do. I'll see if I can blend these together. That might be a little difficult. One or the other is usually better. Although if you study lizards and things with scales, you'll find that oftentimes the larger scales are on the body or the neck, and they get smaller as they get closer to the face and around the fingers. I think the key, though, when you're doing fantasy like this, is to utilize the textures that you see in nature that are really out there in whatever it is, surface that you're trying to recreate, and recreate it believable enough that that thing looks like it could exist. So now I'm just going to pick up some of that dark that I put in the water, and just a couple little spots here and there, and just say, well, okay, this is what water would feel like if it were really foamy and light. Might not have much there at all. So isn't that easy water? Is that the easiest water you've ever done? It should be. You should really simplify it as much as you can. Water that's agitated like waves when they crash against something are very light. All you got to do is a little bit of shadow here and there, and you got it. So you just leave it out, basically. You're drawing the negative spaces around it. It's important, though, to have good scrap. For the same reason, if you want it to look believable, you've got to have good scrap. Anything you take out of your head, it's going to end up being kind of cartoony. Small faces like this with charcoal can be very difficult to do. Having a good eraser close by, very important. As far as the rock goes, well, I guess I better do the seashells here, but as far as the rock goes, it's textured, and because it's been hit by the waves over and over and over, it's probably a little smoother than normal. And so I'm just going to go in and just put in little shapes like this. And knowing that this side's going to be in the shadow where this side's going to be in the light. And maybe there's a little shelf right there too, where so you can add a little bit of that. And really for this, you've drawn so many rocks by this point that you're like, oh, I know what a rock looks like. Have you drawn rocks before? So just little shapes here and there. I'm going to blend some of that. Some of that I'll pull out. But it's also, as the water hits it, that rock is kind of wet. So you've got strong contrast. So I'm just kind of spontaneous here. And then also when I get down to the water, remember that water splashing up on that rock, just leave little spots out wherever you feel like that water was to go or where it needs to be. Just leave it out. This side is in shadow because of her shadow, but there's also a little reflected light. Don't forget that reflected light in her tail. But the rock becomes very easy to do. Once you got those darks in there, you just kind of start blending them, doing the same thing, but bringing that out a little bit. So you get some soft, subtle little crevices, little textures to the rock. And again, you get to pick and choose how much of it you put in. This becomes kind of like the mermaid tail, where you're very spontaneous, but and decide what you want to do with it. Where the water is, just leave it out. You think, oh, there's a little spot of water right there. Just leave it out. If you want that tail to kind of look like it goes through, you in your mind you go, okay, I can see that curve that's right there. I am just going to darken in some areas here and there so that the viewer can get that idea too. That tail continues on and that the spines are coming up right there. So I haven't drawn very much right there, but you get that idea that kind of curves around. And Hopefully that makes sense to you. Once you get it all blended the way you want it, take your kneaded eraser back in. Just clean up any edges, anything. Sometimes the edges of the water can be cleaned up, or whatever you feel like you need to. Last but not least, this area behind where the water goes, your ocean is easy to do. It's just very linear, back and forth. You can do a few little spots here and there like this. Overlap them, kind of like, almost like brick. Those are like your waves. But it should always be back and forth, very linear, like that. Less towards the back. And as you get forward, you space them out just a little bit more. Gives the illusion that they're coming forward, getting larger. And that's water. I mean, piece of cake. Depending on what you want to do with that fin, I'm just going to have some of those little veins kind of come through. Voila. That's really basically it. If you want to do some little clouds at the top, I'll show you how to do clouds with charcoal. And again, we're going to use the cotton swab. You just want a couple little clouds floating by. Instead of drawing the clouds themselves, you draw the sky and leave the clouds out, because clouds are light and fluffy. Except if they're storm clouds and the bottom of the clouds. Bottom of the clouds has a little bit of shading to it. So I can throw in the bottom of the cloud like this. And again, I'm just going to go back and forth. And then the top of the cloud, you're just doing the sky. A little bit of the sky. And just leave some little bumpy areas up above. The bottom of the cloud can be very flat. In the cloud itself, there might be a little bit of darkness in there, so you could just a little bit here and there. But remember, it's very soft and curved up in there. So you don't want too much in there. Just enough to say it's a nice calm day. Mermaid's enjoying a little jaunt on the rocks. Last thing you want to do is sign this, because that just made it yours. And thanks for coming with me on this little mermaid journey. Hope you enjoyed it. Hope you learned something. Hope you try this out too on other fantasy things that you create, dragons and whatever else. And just remember, art makes life better. And I hope you have a lovely day.